All right, let's talk about something we all feel but might not have the words for. Our energy. Today we're diving into the hidden rhythm that runs our lives. We're going to look at two fundamental cycles that govern our mental and emotional states, and, just understanding them might be the key to finally feeling back in sync.
So, let me ask you something. Do you ever have those days, maybe even weeks, where you feel completely and utterly drained, like you're just running on fumes? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you feel this intense pressure building up inside you, like you're about to burst, and there's just nowhere for it to go.
Look, if either of those feelings sounds even a little bit familiar, the first thing you need to hear is this. The problem isn't you. It's not some personal failing or lack of work ethic. It's simply about your rhythm. You've just fallen out of your body's natural, energetic cycle.
And that gets to the absolute core of this idea. We tend to think that life, or success, should be this constant upward climb. But that's just not how we're built. Life is so much more like a heartbeat. It has this natural pulse, an expansion and a contraction, a time for action and a time for rest.
So let's actually break down that pulse. You can think of it as the breath of your soul, and it's really divided into two fundamental states that we're all meant to cycle through. Getting a handle on these two states is, well, it's everything.
So first up, you have Tamas. Think of this as the inward breath. This is your internal sanctuary. It's where you go to observe, to feel, to process things. This is where your batteries get charged. Then you have Rajas. That's the outward breath. This is your external power, when you move, create, and achieve. This is you spending the energy you just built up. See? One is for charging, the other is for spending. And the problems start, as you can imagine, when these two fall out of balance.
Let's start with the first and maybe most common imbalance. We'll call it the depleted warrior. And I'm willing to bet this is going to sound very familiar to a lot of you. It's basically the modern story of burnout.
So what's the core problem here? It's simple, really. Your action state, that Rajas, is way more active than your recharge state, Tamas. It's like you are constantly breathing out without ever stopping to take a breath back in.
And this chart just shows it so clearly. Your energy use, your output, is cranked all the way up to 90. But your energy production, the charge coming in, is down at a measly 20. You're basically demanding a massive performance from a battery that's barely getting any charge at all.
So what does this actually feel like? Well, the symptoms are probably things you know all too well. That deep, chronic lethargy you just can't shake. That frustrating brain fog where nothing feels clear. And maybe worst of all, that nagging sense of failure. Even though you feel like you're working harder than ever, you just feel hollow because you're running on an empty tank.
The end result, of course, is burnout. And the most crucial thing to understand here is that this isn't a failure of your ability. It is a failure of your energy management. It is not a skill problem, it is a fuel problem.
And that brings us to the healing insight. You've heard this a million times, but it's just so profoundly true. You cannot pour from an empty cup. The answer isn't to push harder or to find a new productivity hack. The answer is to just stop.
So here's something you can tell yourself, a little mantra to really let this sink in. I give myself permission to pause. Rest is not the opposite of work, it is the fuel for it. This helps reframe rest not as lazy, but as a totally necessary and productive part of the cycle.
Okay, so that was burnout. But what about the other side of the coin? Let's look at this second diagnosis, the overwhelmed vessel. This is for anyone out there who feels stuck, anxious, and just full of this restless energy that they can't seem to use. Here, the imbalance is completely reversed. Your recharge state, your Tamas, is way more active than your action state, Rajas. You're constantly breathing in. You're taking in energy, emotions, information, but you're never breathing out. There's just no release valve.
And you can see it right here. It's the total opposite of the last chart. Your energy production is through the roof at 95%, but your energy use is only at 15%. You've basically got this overcharged battery with absolutely nowhere for all that power to go.
The symptoms here are different, but they are just as tough. We're talking about intense anxiety, that feeling of inner pressure, endless cycles of overthinking, feeling completely stuck under the weight of your own heavy emotions, and sometimes that built-up pressure just leads to impulsive behavior, just to get some kind of relief.
And the consequence of all this? It's a flood, not a flow. When all that energy gets built up with no healthy channel, it just forces its way out. It bursts out, usually in the form of rash decisions or emotional outbursts that you end up regretting later.
Now here is the healing insight for this state, and this is so important to hear. You are not lazy. That feeling of being stuck is not a lack of motivation. You are congested. You have a surplus of power, and your recovery is found in one thing: movement.
So for this feeling, here's the mantra you need. I release what I hold. My emotions are energy, and I choose to direct them into positive action. This is so empowering, right? It helps you see your intense feelings not as a burden, but as fuel that can be channeled into something constructive.
Okay, so we've looked at the two big ways things can go wrong: the depleted warrior and the overwhelmed vessel. So, what's the fix? How do we find our way back to that natural, effortless balance?
The path back to balance is actually beautifully simple. It just boils down to these two steps. Step 1, when you feel full of emotion, full of ideas, full of energy, let your Raja state motivate you to act and release it. Go do something. And step 2, when you are empty and tired, let your Tamas state invite you in to rest and recharge. That's it. It's really just about listening to what your body is telling you it needs in the moment.
And that's really what this all comes down to. The goal isn't to force yourself to be on all the time. And it's not to suppress your feelings until they explode. The goal is just to stop fighting the natural rhythm of your own energy, to inhale and to exhale, to charge and to release. Don't fight the rhythm. Just breathe.